Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Gender Creative Child: Pathways for Nurturing and Supporting Children Who Live Outside Gender Boxes, by Diane Ehrensaft, Ph.D. Foreword by Norman Speck, M.D. Narrated by Beth Pfeifer. Foreword by Norman Speck, M.D. In 1985, when I ran an adolescent medicine practice, a colleague asked me to provide testosterone treatment for a recent college graduate, my first transgender patient. Although the patient had been born anatomically female and had reached full female puberty, he went through college as a male, with the support of his 3 male non-trans roommates, who kept his secret. Treatment was simplistic and insufficient then, especially for patients transitioning from male to female. We only treated adolescents over the age of 16, post-puberty, who had been referred by highly experienced therapists, of whom there were few who worked closely with gender-nonconforming young people. No psychological tests were performed, no blockers given to suppress the hormones from the ovaries or testes. The cross-sex hormonal protocols used for those patients transitioning from female to male were identical to those used for genetic males born without testes or with low levels of testosterone. Even patients who had undergone full puberty could cease menstruating with normal male replacement doses of testosterone. The patients emerged much the way they do now, bearded, with a male build, although often short for a male, and in need of a mastectomy to flatten the chest. They looked so virilized that, when clothed, only someone with knowledge of their history would guess their anatomic birth sex. In contrast, it took massive doses of estrogen to feminize anatomic males. It remained difficult to suppress undesired erections, and it was nearly impossible to adequately suppress the testosterone levels in patients with functional gonads. Thus, breast development was usually suboptimal, causing many patients to bear the added expense of augmentation surgery. In sum, at the time, I felt that the available treatment for my patients, even those who arrived as young as 16, was inadequate. If born anatomically male, they had difficulty passing for female in society, which contributed to their depression. If born anatomically female, they arrived too late to have prevented unwanted breast development and menses. The approach to understanding gender-nonconforming children, too, was insufficient. Criticized for supporting their children's transgender identity, parents were told by some prominent therapists to restrict access to toys and clothes of the opposite sex. Fortunately, that seemingly punitive attempt to redirect children from becoming transgender has been discredited. In her seminal book, Gender Born, Gender Made, 2011, Dr. Diane Ehrensaft describes the more compassionate way for parents to support their children. Approaches to early pubertal adolescence have also taken a sharp turn. In 1998, pediatric psychologists, psychiatrists, and endocrinologists at the Free University Medical Center in Amsterdam initiated treatment with reversible blocking drugs to suppress pubertal hormones at the inception of puberty. Their protocol was based on the hypothesis that, while pre-pubertal children of both sexes are similar in appearance, pubertal hormones cause permanent physical changes that interfere with the physical form they desire. In a state of pubertal arrest, patients gain time to be further evaluated, to come to terms with their gender identity, and to understand the medical consequences of taking irreversible hormones of the opposite sex, including infertility. Once patients reach the age of 15 to 16, the Dutch add testosterone or estrogen treatment to the blockers in normative doses. In our clinic, virilizing breast removals are done at ages 14 to 16, and feminizing genital surgeries are delayed until ages 17 to 18. In 2007, with the blessing of the chief of the endocrine division and the most senior administrative leadership at Boston Children's Hospital, I co-founded the Gender Management Service, GEMS, following the Amsterdam model. The research conducted in Amsterdam, published in 2014, has shown the efficacy, safety, and psychosocial well-being that results from this approach. The GEMS was the first pediatric academic center in North America to open a medical clinic for transgender adolescents. In 2008, Dr. Diane Ehrensaft co-founded the Child and Adolescent Gender Center at the University of California, San Francisco. They too treat children and teens with hormone blockers. And most importantly, Dr. Ehrensaft and others like her promote the gender-affirmative approach, an effort to aid children in affirming their authentic gender rather than influencing them to accept the gender that would match the sex assigned to them at birth. In 2009, the Endocrine Society, the largest and most prestigious international association of endocrinologists, released the Endocrine Treatment of Transsexual Persons, which recommended pubertal suppression as the treatment of choice in earliest puberty. The American Psychiatric Association's 5th edition, 2013, of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, replaced its former term, gender identity disorder, with gender dysphoria. In an instant, transgenderism was no longer an inherent psychiatric disease. As a result of these groundbreaking publications, insurance companies could no longer justify denial of medications and surgeries. Pediatric endocrine and adolescent medicine divisions were empowered to create medical clinics for transgender youth. By 2015, 50 such programs had sprung up in North America, and the numbers continue to grow. The evolution of counseling and medical treatment for adolescents has not been so straightforward, however. It has been like opening one of those wooden Russian dolls and finding another smaller one inside. In focusing on adolescents, we were reminded that we had missed the opportunity to provide ongoing support for the parents of children with gender dysphoria who felt isolated and confused by the conflicting opinions of academic clinicians. Dr. Ehrensaft's guidance, via her landmark interview on National Public Radio in 2008, and her book, Gender Born, Gender Made, was a balm for these families, who have literally been held together by this original work. Consistent with Dr. Ehrensaft's teachings, our clinic is now staffed to offer intensive support for such families. Then, another Russian doll appeared. Patients arrived with issues that were new to us, although not to Dr. Ehrensaft. Referring to themselves as genderqueer or gender fluid, the term I prefer, these teens rejected any permanent gender identity. Their parents were understandably at wit's end and in need of experienced advice. Fortunately, they can receive support in this newest book of Dr. Ehrensaft's, The Gender Creative Child. Her recommendations will ease the journey for even more families with gender-creative children. Dr. Ehrensaft's wisdom is equally essential for and accessible to their therapists, physicians, evaluating psychologists, and teachers, as well as all of us who struggle to understand gender fluidity. Norman Spack, MD, is the director and co-founder of the Gender Management Service Clinic at Boston Children's Hospital, the first U.S. clinic to medically treat transgender children. Dr. Spack has helped pioneer the use of hormone blockers to delay puberty and of hormone replacement therapy in teens. He has received national attention for his 2014 TEDx talk, How I Help Transgender Teens Become Who They Want to Be, over 1 million views, and was featured in Diane Sawyer's landmark interview with Bruce, now Caitlyn, Jenner. Dr. Spack is Associate Professor of Pediatrics at Harvard Medical School. Chapter 1. Who is the gender-creative child? Our genders are as unique as we are. No one's definition is the same, and compartmentalizing a person as either a boy or a girl based entirely on the appearance of genitalia at birth undercuts our complex life experiences. Janet Mock, Redefining Realness. Some years ago, I began to see a little girl in therapy. Stephanie had been grumbling since she was 3 years old. I think I might be a boy. Her parents thought it was just a stage that she'd grow out of, but she didn't, and for some time she lived as a boy girl. Then she gradually moved in the direction of boy. Now, Stephanie is Stephen and goes to middle school. It is not always so easy, and some schoolmates who knew Stephen as a girl tease him and tell him he's not a real boy. That hurts his feelings, and his father tells him just to knock them flat. Not such a great strategy for the smallest boy in the class. But Stephen marches forward to carve out a space to be the boy that he is now discovering himself to be. I hadn't seen Stephen for a while, but one day recently we had a check-in appointment. No sooner had we settled in when Stephen pronounced with great aplomb, "You know, Dr. Ehrensaft, Gender-Born, Gender-Made was pretty good, but you should write another book. And this time, it should be a book about me." So, here I am writing that book, not just about Stephen, but about all the children and youth I have gotten to know since I crossed the last T and dotted the last I, virtually, on Gender-Born, Gender-Made. From the time I wrote Gender-Born, Gender-Made, so much has happened on the gender front in such a short number of years that I hardly know where to start. But let me try. Gender and geology. Gender bedrock. 2 words that have been fused together for centuries in Western culture. Why else would the first question to a pregnant friend be, "Is it a boy or a girl? Do you know yet?" But suddenly, in the last decade, the 2 words have been broken apart. Instead of gender as bedrock, we are now witnessing gender as moving boulders. I live in earthquake country, so I'm always a bit queasy about making references to the Earth's moving under our feet, but I'd have to say that an earth-shaking explosion has been happening when it comes to gender. No sooner do we think we have all the new terminology about gender clear in our heads than we discover we were all wrong and that today's words are already passé. Moving from geological metaphor to human action, nothing less than a gender revolution is going on, with people taking to the streets to shout out, "No more gender boxes," and the trans community and its allies mobilizing to push the agenda so succinctly articulated by Janet Mock. Our genders are as unique as we are. Who is leading this revolution? Children, who are nimbly pushing the boulders around, creating an ever-shifting terrain as we try to grasp, what's your gender? Indeed, a new group of boys, the Pink Boys, have made their voices heard. Actually, Pink Boys have been around for a long time, but now they have coalesced into a social entity with a message to deliver. Like the traditional tomboy, they wear clothes of the opposite gender but assert themselves as boys. I like dresses. Why shouldn't I get to wear them just because I'm a boy? They are getting media attention. Such books as My Princess Boy, Jacob's New Dress, and Raising My Rainbow are being written about them. Their celebratory gender freedom and people's uneasy reactions to it lay bare the sexist double standard that more freely allows girls to cross gender lines but stay girls, while policing or even punishing any boy who attempts to do the same. Rather than leaving us in question about their gender, they are demanding just the opposite. No question, I'm a boy, I like dresses, so get over it. Right after Gender-Born, Gender-Made was published, a flurry of activity showed up in Toronto, Canada. Two parents, Kathy Wintrick and David Stalker, had made the decision to keep private the assigned sex of their 5-month-old baby. Then, they decided to go public with their story. The genitals of that child, whose name is Storm, were known by only a select few. The parents did not want cultural pressures to intrude on Storm's freedom to discover their own gender, and they wanted to give the child as much opportunity as possible to explore gender without being boxed into a category. And so, we had The Storm about Storm. Within 24 hours, the story, first published in the Toronto Star, went viral, with a flood of social media commentary mounting into the hundreds of thousands. And the majority of those comments were vitriolic in their condemnation of Storm's parents. They're turning their child into a freak. They're using their child for their own political ends. Babies are not social experiments. Storm will grow up forever damaged, maybe even deranged. Many people looked at the photo of this blonde-haired little baby and said definitively, "Oh, I know it's a boy, you can tell." Or, "Who are they trying to kid? Storm is obviously a girl." I received requests for comments on Storm from reporters and journalists all over the world. The most common question posed to me was, if Storm isn't told what gender Storm is, won't Storm be confused? My response? Not as confused as we are. It makes us incredibly anxious when someone purposefully removes gender markers. How are we going to get our bearings and classify a person without them? Think about it. It's almost reflexive for us to scan a room we enter and take note. Who are the men? Who are the women? And so, as bedrock crumbles and moving boulders rumble, it will be a challenge for all of us to unmoor ourselves from the constrictive and restrictive confines of gender-binary assumptive assuredness. As I wrote Gender-Born, Gender-Made, I had an inkling that a sea change in gender was occurring, but I had no idea that in such a short time it would hit land and rock the earth as it has, at home, in our communities, in our society, and across the globe. In February 2014, Facebook changed its U.S. profile options for gender, extending it from 2 to 50 categories, including transgender, cisgender, agender, gender fluid, intersex, neither, trans female, trans male, trans person, gender variant, gender questioning, bigender, androgynous, pangender, and transsexual. People creating a profile can choose as many categories as they want. In 2012, California passed legislation prohibiting mental health practitioners from engaging in practices that attempted to change a minor's gender behaviors. State Assembly Bill 1172. New Jersey soon followed suit, along with the District of Columbia, and as I sit here writing, 15 other states have similar bills pending. Looking north across the border, Ontario passed a no reparative therapy bill in 2015, in the same year that President Obama and the White House issued a statement condemning the practice of reparative therapy. In 2013, California passed another piece of legislation ensuring that all students in public schools are allowed to use the facilities and engage in activities associated with their affirmed gender rather than their natal sex. State Assembly Bill 1266. In 2013, gender identity disorder was removed from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, replaced by a more palatable, but still problematic, mental health diagnosis of gender dysphoria. In the fall of 2011, the World Health Professional Association of Transgender Health, WPATH, released its new standards of care, which state explicitly that it is unethical and harmful to engage in any form of therapy that attempts to change one's gender. The American Psychological Association followed suit and released a large volume of new guidelines for gender-supportive care. New gender clinics have begun to pop up across the United States and beyond to aid children in affirming their authentic gender. The gender-affirmative approach has emerged and has become an ascending international model for supporting children and youth's gender health, an effort that I am proud to be a part of. Simultaneously, therapeutic models aimed at altering children's gender to conform to cultural norms or influencing children to accept the gender that matches the sex on their birth certificate have been challenged, declared unethical, and evaluated as harmful to children's well-being. In 2007, Barbara Walters produced a 2020 documentary on transgender kids. It was the first of its kind in TV broadcasts and a transformative turn of events in media history. With transgender children and their families from cities and small towns all over the United States, not just Berkeley, California, portrayed in a positive and empathetic light. As I write this in 2015, it seems that a week does not go by without a new media account of gender-nonconforming or transgender children. I could go on, but suffice it to say that as these changes have rolled out in such a short band of time, we gender specialists, in partnership with the families who are raising the children, can hardly keep up. Every day we learn more and see how much more we have to learn about helping our children discover and fortify their true gender selves. Upon completion of Gender Born, Gender Made, I received an email from a gay cousin of mine that meant more to me than any published book review or commentary. He wrote, "Having lived in San Francisco and West Hollywood, I've seen the gamut on gender nonconformity and the work in progress and end result of those who finally accept who they are or are meant to be. If more parents would have had your book as a guide, we would have a much more accepting world and much more happy children and adults." I can think of nothing better as my small contribution to making the world a better place than to create a more gender-accepting world and open the path for more happy children and adults. But I have come to realize that my work had only just begun when I put the final touches on Gender Born, Gender Made, and now it is time to continue that journey. To that end, I'd like to zoom in on a particular poignant moment in our new Gender as Moving Boulders world. On June 9, 2014, Laverne Cox, the transgender actress in the TV series Orange is the New Black, appeared on the cover of Time magazine. Hers was the lead story in that issue. In it, the author, Kate Steinmetz, highlighted a moment when Cox appeared in San Francisco as part of the San Francisco Arts and Lectures series, a very popular Bay Area event. A note was passed up to her on stage, written in pencil in a child's handwriting on a piece of notebook paper. It read, "I'm Soleil. I'm 6 and I get bullied. Since I get teased in school, I go to the bathroom or to the office. What can I say to the kids who tease me? What if they don't listen to me? Soleil was a transgender little girl. The audience cheered when they discovered Soleil was right there in the audience, and then Laverne Cox called her up to the stage and said these words to her. "You're beautiful. You're perfect just the way you are. I was bullied too, and I was called all kinds of names, and now I'm a big TV star. Don't let anything they say get to you. Just know that you're amazing." That will probably be an indelible event in Soleil's memory. Realistically, most gender-nonconforming children on the way to affirming their true gender are not going to have the opportunity to get up on a stage and shake hands with a transgender media celebrity. Yet, contrast Soleil's uplifting experience with a time back in the 1950s when I was just a little girl and picked up a copy of my parents' Life magazine. I just stared and stared at the cover, transfixed. It was a picture of a woman who used to be a man, Christine Jorgensen. She was an ex-GI who became the first documented American to go through a sex change operation. I do not recall any 1950s stories about her having the opportunity to speak to an audience of sympathetic listeners and connect with a little girl just like her, proudly accompanied up to the stage by an older relative. Instead, we all reacted to the news about Christine Jorgensen with voyeuristic excitement or disbelief, as if it was a phenomenon as impossible as launching a rocket into space, which would happen only a few years later when the Soviets sent Sputnik orbiting into the stratosphere. Fast forward to 2014, and we now have clinics around the world that provide a myriad of medical interventions to help not just adults, but youth become the gender they know themselves to be, even if it does not match the sex listed on their birth certificate. So, yes, we've come a long way, baby, but this time it is not about women's rights, although that too, but about the expanded opportunities for children to go forward and declare they have a gender that is dictated neither by a medical assignment on their birth certificate nor by the social gender prescriptions and prescriptions of the culture around them. And we are not talking about the fantastic, as if these events are some sci-fi vision come true. We are zooming in on the everyday lives of present-day children and their parents as they follow a path that will allow their children's gender to bloom. And yet, those lives are indeed fantastic in their creativity, in their complexity, and in their challenge to our outmoded thinking about gender as an immutable given once you exit the womb and get an M or F printed on your birth certificate. The gender-creative child. While writing Gender-Born, Gender-Made, I conjured up the concept of the gender-creative child. The child who weaves together nature, nurture, and culture in an infinite variety of ways to establish the gender that is me. That me may be a boy, a girl, or a melange of gender, and may not reflect the sex that was listed on the child's birth certificate, or it could. At the time, a suggestion was made by some of the staff at The Experiment that I name that book The Gender Creative Child. I brought that idea to a local group of gender specialists, asking them to brainstorm with me on book titles. The Gender Creative Child got nixed. Some trans activists in the group were concerned that without having read the book, seeing that as the title would make people think that I was promoting the idea that people invent or select their gender, rather than discovering what is simply there inside them. I deferred to their wisdom and landed on the title Gender-Born, Gender-Made, which I was quite happy with. But, as with any...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?